Welcome to Women Winning Divorce with your host, Heather Quick. Heather brings over 20 years of law experience that advocates and empowers women to achieve happier and healthier lives. Each week, we provide knowledge and guidance on different aspects of family law to help lead women through the difficult and emotional legal challenges that they are facing. Listen in as she discusses issues including divorce, custody, alimony, paternity, narcissism, mediation, and other family law issues to provide insight on the journey of women winning divorce. Welcome to the show. I'm Julie Morgan, and I'm joined by your host, Heather Quick. How you doing, Heather?
I am wonderful, Julie. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I have a friend, and her son is going into the second grade. And yeah, and she sends me a picture of him for every grade level, like for some pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, but they just moved away to Pennsylvania. So I can't see him before he goes to school. And so this picture is precious, very precious to me. So yeah.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
Yes. My little boy that I can give back to his real parents anytime. I'm thinking about that because I know it's school time. Oh my goodness.
That's right.
Yeah. So today's topic, how to have the divorce conversation. This is probably really hard. Am I right?
Yes, this is going to be a difficult conversation. And this is a good topic to talk about because it's a question so many women, want to know.
Yeah.
How to do it, or how to, especially because they're like, I want to initiate this. I want to have this conversation. What do I do?
But I mean, so we're thinking about this. This is a serious conversation. This is a serious topic. I can't just leave a note or a text message, right?
I would say not. I don't think that's going to get a response that you're looking for. I don't see any benefit to that. Yeah, at all.
And being, a little tipsy, probably not a good idea.
Very bad idea. It's gonna probably say things that you shouldn't, and things could escalate. I think this is more of a, more of an adult, definitely an adult sober conversation that, you may be at a different, you may not be all the way sure, but you're really considering it. There could be so many places you might be in, various women would be in, where they're wanting to have this conversation. And so I think that's why this is a good topic, because you really want to have some advice that's going to help you. And it's not the same advice for everybody, because there are going to be different situations for some women, and maybe some women, they really just shouldn't have the conversation at all.
So you really need to set the tone before you even have the conversation. You really need to think about it yourself so you can be in the right frame of mind.
I think so. I think that you want to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Because if you're considering like, hey, how do I have this conversation? Then I am just going to presume that you and your husband are pretty amicable, and there's no violence, there's no concerns of any abuse or financial abuse, and you don't have any concerns about that, and you're just wanting to have the conversation.
Okay. So wait a minute. So that means I really need to think about, I didn't even think about any of that. I really need to think about everything before I approach this conversation.
I think so. And so very often, women will have met with an attorney prior to this conversation, because this comes up sometimes in our consults. So this could be like, this is what I want to talk about with them, but I've already talked to a lawyer, or this is a discussion that's kind of coming out of counseling together or whatever. And you're like, listen, this is not working. I think we need to maybe separate. I think it's a similar conversation. In your mind, you're like, this is a divorce conversation, and it may be, it's final, but I kind of think that there should be some conversations prior to that that would be similar, like, maybe we separate or have a divorce or and that's not a fight. It's a conversation. And that might be hard. That might be hard to navigate if things are really not in a good space.
Okay, Heather, there are so many places I could go with this. Okay, all right. So let's take a step back though. So one thing that I think about that's probably important is when I'm thinking about the conversation, what I'm going to do before I talk to him. I'm going to probably think about his feelings. That's important. You may not like him, but there's still a level of respect that you need to have. Am I right?
I mean, you can. I mean, I don't know. I think like I because okay, so Julie, from my perspective, all right, listen, if you are gonna okay, I'm just gonna say if you're gonna have this conversation, sure, you can be concerned with his feelings, but I advise you to first be concerned about yourself in some pretty basic important ways. And what I mean is, do you have access to money? Is your husband, if you are trying to have this conversation, the type of man who's going to just cancel the credit cards and try to move money out of the bank? If so, then don't have that conversation until you've made sure you've got, access to money that he can't keep you from, at least for the next like 90 days. I know you're looking shocked, girl. I can't even believe you're looking shocked that I would say this and that this would happen. Like after all this time together.
Okay, Heather. I'm seriously. So you guys, you can't see us. I'm over here. I'm just laughing, and because I mean, I'm thinking, all right, I didn't even go there. I'm thinking, okay, first of all, I need to think about his feelings before I tell him. That's what I'm thinking. But no, you're planning this even before you get to that part.
Yes, because it you want to be respectful and kind. Okay, but let's be smart first. Okay? And I'm not talking to be hateful or vengeful, but let's be smart and strategic. Because I just want you to know, and ladies know, if it's reversed, he's being smart and strategic, and he's not that worried. He might be worried about your feelings, but he's more worried about his money than his feelings. So don't think he hadn't thought that through. And that's all I'm bringing to the forefront because I have seen it happen that way. And, and what I've told women on many occasions, like, I really don't want you to come back and say, "Oh, Heather, you were right. I should have listened. I know I'm right." So try not to get yourself in that situation when there are some men you have that conversation and they're just going to be so angry and all of a sudden the money's moved and you don't have access to the savings and it can happen pretty quickly and you're shocked. So that's what I'm trying to tell these ladies. Don't be shocked and don't be naive about the person that you are married to, who you know way better than I do. I'm just telling you this is possible. And if you hear it and go, oh yeah, he would do that. Okay. Then this is more about seeing a lawyer first and then talk to us about if this is a good idea, how to have this conversation and how you prepare yourself first.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay, Heather. Wait a minute. So this really involves so much more than what I've been thinking about. This you went to money, you went to just okay, wait a minute. So is this basically making sure that you have, I don't know, your escape plan in place before?
Exactly. Just have a contingency plan because, okay, there are so many different women listening to this. Okay, there are the ones who are listening and it's resonating, and they're like, that, yes, I can envision that happening. And there are others who are like, nah, he's just not that kind of person. And plus I got my own mind. Like we're set. We each have, like, I'm fine. I have plenty of access to funds. I'm not worried about it. And so that's why I want to speak to both extremes. And then there are people in the middle who might be like, well, I'm not sure, but I might as well be smart and set myself, make sure I'm good in case he really takes it badly. And that's why I do think it's important. And, therapists complete they will start out with about the feelings and the respect, and then I'll say, whoa, like, what about this? And then they'll see that other side. So it's just presenting both sides. Yes, in the ideal, mature, respectful world, they'll have a very nice adult conversation, and no one's going to raise their voice, and we're going to just, consciously uncouple and just be so civilized. And that is great. And I know there are people who can do that, and they do. And they don't always, they don't have as much interaction with attorneys as others, where there's a little bit more contention. And both are great things to do. I just would feel as though I set many women up on a wrong path if we just talked about, let's plan the conversation, which there's a lot of great things to say about that, and be in a public place, but kind of quiet, but a place where you feel safe if that's an issue, and maybe where you won't raise your voice or carry on, and maybe he won't, so that maybe the two of you can hear each other.
Okay. So wait a minute. So let's go back to, because I said don't do this by, it's probably not good if you do it by text message or by a note. It sounds like for some people that actually may be better.
Well, there are some relationships where, and I just tell them, just let us serve him. You don't have to have that conversation. Now the conversation with the spouse and the kids, that's a different story. And that's another topic that we're not touching on today, but there are a lot of relations, we've met with so many women at the firm over the years. So I will tell you, I have heard over the years, people have fights and they throw divorce around a lot. There are some relations. Okay. Not everybody or whatever, but there are some. Yeah. And when you hear those facts, particularly from women, I'll say, well, is he really even going to believe you? Because how many times have you threatened this and done nothing? And they're going to say a lot. And I'm going to say, in my experience, men expect you to do the same thing that you always done. And you've never done it before. So they're going to be shocked and they're not going to believe you. So if you're doing this, well, I'm divorcing you, to elicit a reaction or as part of a pattern of prior arguments or fights, it's going to be ineffective. It's going to be completely ineffective. Unless you are in front of a counselor and really trying to de-escalate the conversation and have him hear you. But you better plan to take action, or why waste your time if you're not really moving forward with a divorce?
Okay, Heather. You know what? We start our conversations and I think they're going to go one way, and then you totally throw me a curveball and they go a different way. I like it.
Well, I know I like to keep you on your toes and, bring some spontaneity to this. But the reality is, you might think you're like, oh, exactly. I know exactly what Heather's going to say, and I'll just tell you what goes on in this brain. Shoot, you don't even want to try to guess how I'm thinking through stuff. I'm telling you, it's a wild place up there. And I just have a lot of different ways. And sometimes it does need to be through service. Sometimes it needs to be, with a counselor. That's only going to really be effective if you've been in marriage counseling before.
Okay, hold on. If you can say that last part again, because there was an internet glitch, where you said sometimes it could be a counselor, or sometimes it could be in person, or sometimes with a counselor. If you could say that part again.
Right. Sometimes the relationship is such that I would advise, don't have the conversation. Hire the attorney and he can be served with papers. And then he'll know you're serious. And that might be the best for a lot of people. Others, maybe if you've been in counseling, because otherwise, if you invite him to a counseling session, he's, I don't know, if that will be effective, but it might be. Again, it goes back to what we talked about, I think, last week. What kind of communication do the two of you have, and how effective are you going to be able to communicate what, is going to happen in the future? And ideally, if you two are in that good space with good communication, that can be face to face. And, we'll talk about that a little bit more on the conversation. But I felt like it was important to say, for some, that is not probably going to benefit you.
You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. When we return, we're going to take a quick break here, but when we return, we're going to talk more about this conversation, planning it out, and hopefully Heather will not throw another curveball. Stay with us. Welcome back to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. Heather, okay, you threw me a curveball in segment one of this. Now you said that you shouldn't do this when you've been tipsy. You're tipsy or angry or too emotional. What about a big event? You should probably try to avoid that, right?
Yes. And I think, or holidays, because although that stress level may push you to the point where you're like, I can't keep it in anymore. On two things. One, that is like this surprise, you blurted it out, you didn't really think it through. Again, need to have your plan in place and be prepared for that. But also, if you want to be, I just think that he won't take it seriously. And so therefore you question, like, why am I having this conversation? Because if I'm expecting a certain result, well, let's talk about the result you're expecting. And then I think it helps you plan it. If you do it on a holiday or a big event, and just tell them, hey, before you, walk in, hey, by the way, I want a divorce. I mean, what do you expect from that? You're not going to get a great response. And also, I think he's not going to take you seriously. It could end up just being a fight, and not really something that's productive.
Okay, but Heather, what if you need that protection? Does that make sense? So if you need the protection of people being around, and you're hoping that this is going to, soften that part. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm telling you, if you think you need people around to have this conversation, then you don't need to have the conversation. And you just need to hire an attorney and have him served. I just don't, if you are that fearful, and I don't care if it's just all you and you can't do it, that's okay. But clearly there's something going on there that is making you that way. And who's to say he deserves a conversation about this? And I don't know. I've read a lot about it, and there's all these nice things and ways to do it. But I think the reality is that you've got to think about more than just, oh, I need to be respectful and nice to him. I think you need to think about the reality of your situation. And again, if you think you can't have this unless it's like at Christmas dinner where everybody's there, so you have support, like, that's just a really bad decision. And now you've invited a lot of comments and opinions into this event, your life, that they don't belong there. They're not going to help guide you. And you're not thinking clearly. If you think that is a good idea, then you're just not really in reality.
And another thing I thought about, you could possibly have a relationship, because you kind of mentioned this, you could have a relationship where at these big events, you say, you know what, I'm getting rid of you. And that's just your way. And so he may not take you seriously.
Right. Again, it's like, what truly is your outcome? What do you hope to happen out of this conversation? Because I think many women have this conversation and they want him to beg them not to do it. And that's their pattern. That's okay. Just recognize, like, understand if that's what you want. Okay. I mean, there are probably other ways therapists or somebody would tell you to do it. I'd even tell you that's probably not the most effective way. But what are you hoping the outcome to be from this conversation? That's a great place to start, because then we can really map it out. Like, so, okay, so let's say your outcome, why you want to have this conversation, is because you want him to say, yeah, honey, you're right. This hasn't been working for either of us. So just tell me everything you want and I will sign it over to you and I'll walk away quietly. Okay. I mean, who doesn't want that outcome? All right. So do we think this conversation is going to produce that? I don't know. I don't know your husband, but hey, if you think it will, go for it. And you think he's that just chill and whatever, okay, then try to have that conversation. But if you think having this conversation, he's going to say, oh, okay, hon. So you just want me to move out and then we're going to have a divorce and, I'm going to be okay with it. I just don't see that happening that often. And I think women need to question what they're hoping to achieve by this. And if they just like, well, I just want to let them know, like, I'm done. Okay. I think that's fair. And let's figure out how to have that conversation.
Okay, so if someone has come to your office, if they've made the appointment, come to your office ahead of time, do you walk them through this? Do you talk about, how are you going to have this conversation with him?
Sometimes we do. And depending on what they present to us,
Mhm.
again, if they say, some women, hey, we've been talking about it, like, I'm just done. Let's just do it. I'll say, then just serve him. I mean, if you're really expecting a positive response, like, I think you're kind of fooling yourself, unless you guys have been doing a lot of therapy and you have been communicating and you're kind of both on the same page. But if not, like I said, because I think many men, if you haven't done it before, they're not going to expect it, that, just be realistic about what you think his reaction will be. Him. And so we do talk about that. We absolutely talk about that when they come to our office, because many times we will advise that not to have that conversation. Because of all the things we talked about before, finances, safety.
Okay, so, I mean, hmm. I think about this, and so if you've walked them through this conversation, right? And if they do decide to have the conversation, you should probably not say, my attorney said blah, 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 blah.
Agreed. I don't think that is ever a great way to start a sentence. If you're looking for a positive, amicable response, I mean, that just puts somebody on the defensive. They're going to probably be defensive anyway. And it's just, I think that what would be appropriate, because, okay, we're having this conversation. Listen, this isn't working. I want us to move forward with a divorce. I think that, write that down, this isn't working. I want us to move forward with a divorce. I think we should both hire attorneys and do this as reasonable, as sensible as we can, and continue to have respect for one another, particularly if we have children, but just, the emotional toll that takes for that to be unnecessary. But that's pretty much it. You've made the decision and you say that, and, understand that, your husband, but he may be like, okay, and get up and walk away and be like, I don't need to talk about it. That's what you told me. Like, I'm out. And I think a lot of, like, having the conversation, that's why the outcome that you're expecting or anticipate is really important, because you may be shocked that he's like, okay, I'll get an attorney, I'll let you know, and walks away. I mean, that could happen. I mean, many people aren't like, they got to process it. And
Yeah.
so, and I don't think that's a bad reaction. I think that's probably a typical reaction of a lot of men, that I think that's perfectly normal and calm. And that's what you're wanting. If it's just still a shock, like I said. So don't be surprised if there's just not a lot of conversation. If you're clear and direct. I mean, if you're going to narrate the whole marriage and all the reasons it didn't work, that's not going to get a good reaction. I think that's a really terrible idea. And if that's what you want to do, I think that is a therapy. I don't think sitting there narrating everything that's wrong is the way to have this conversation, because we're talking about the divorce conversation. So at the end of the game, that doesn't matter. You want a divorce. Why do you need to justify that decision? That can be a complete sentence. I want a divorce.
Okay.
Julie, now you look stressed.
Heather, I am stressed, and I'm not even going through this. I'm just like, this is stressful. It's stressful to me just hearing about it. Because, okay, this is another thing I thought about. If you said, think about his reaction, right?
Right.
What if you have someone that is controlling and they're a narcissist? I mean, what in the world?
Keep your mouth shut, hire your attorney, and let us serve him. That's what you do.
Heather, it's just that simple, huh?
Yes, it is. It is. And that will cause you less grief. There's nothing good that's going to come out of, like, there are certain personalities, controlling, narcissist. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to be like, all right, and boom, locked out of everything. And then they're probably going to go hire the attorney and be ready to serve you and come on the attack. It's not, don't have the conversation. I'm telling you, it's just not going to end the way you're dreaming in, fantasy land. It's not going to happen.
Okay, well, tell me this. Before I even get to, okay, well, let me ask you this. Before I even get to the point of the conversation with him, do you suggest, I already know the answer to this, or I think I know the answer to this. Do you suggest, talking to your best friend about it?
I guess that depends. Again, on what are you looking for that? Are you looking for validation? Are you looking for advice? Or do you just want some support emotionally? I mean, I think the marriage is between the two of you. But, many of us, of course, I hope, that everybody's got some type of support that they could lean on. Now, I would suggest that if they're advising you on how to do it, that you make sure this is advice that you want, or if they're advising you and you didn't ask, remember, you didn't ask for advice, but out of love, they're trying to help you. And kind of, you just got to filter that. I mean, I certainly, if you told your best friend, that's one thing, but don't go tell everybody before you tell him, because then you're going to find out and you've avoided the point and you're just being passive aggressive. And I just don't think that's a good strategy.
I was thinking that, okay, so what if you went the wrong way, you did this the wrong way, and it gets back to him? That could be really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be uncomfortable. And then again, what's your objective with telling all these people? It's to get him to have the conversation because you're too scared to have it. So don't have it, and then just hire an attorney, for heaven's sakes. I mean, don't go around doing all this nonsense that's not going to be helpful to you. That's not going to help you move through this. And I know a lot, there may be some people thinking, oh gosh, that's so hardcore, just serve him. But doing that is worse. A process server is just a process server. And if you are unable to have an adult conversation, grown up conversation with your husband about this because of your history, because of how you both kind of are in the relationship, it doesn't matter. No judgment there. But if you can't, you can't. Or you don't think you can. From my standpoint, I'm like, then don't, it's okay. Because if you guys haven't been in therapy and you don't want to go to therapy, you're not trying to have this conversation because you just don't think you can with him, I think that's okay. And I think that is going to be some of our listeners. And then there are going to be a lot of our listeners who we can have this conversation. And the first thing is think about, well, what outcome do you want from that? And is that a realistic outcome, knowing your husband and the relationship the two of you have? So that's all, just knowing, don't expect somebody new to show up when you have this conversation. That's not the person you've been married to for the past 10 years. I mean, that's just, again, really kind of the definition of insanity. Like, you have a good sense
Yeah.
of how it's going to be.
So it sounds like you're saying that you need to be realistic with yourself.
I think so. I think that's very helpful, because then you aren't kind of creating a whole thing that really didn't need to happen that way. And hopefully this helps people, because I think if they really think, and that's a great thing, I think, for anybody to do, we talk planning the conversation, play it out in your head. I mean, you should hopefully, and maybe that's the reason you want a divorce. You don't know him at all. And so then you don't know what he's going to do, but you kind of hopefully you would have a sense. Play that out in your head and think, maybe I need to do something differently. What if he just says, okay, I'll get an attorney, thanks. Like, has that taken the wind out of your sails? And you wanted some big, undying profession of love and begging you not to, and then you just do a total, Rhett Butler and Gone with the Wind, like, I'm out of here, like, forget it, and then, like, again, I don't mean to minimize the emotions and stuff and everything going through with this, but again, ask yourself, what is my goal with this? Because there are a lot of goals that we may have as the one initiating this conversation, or a lot of outcomes that aren't really going to benefit either party as far as a fight, or you're using it, or you're hoping to have this conversation and he professes his undying love, promises to do all these things. I mean, you kind of know if you think that's going to happen. And so then play it out. How are you going to react to that? Or how are you going to react if he just doesn't? Like, if you really think he's going to do that and he doesn't, are you okay with that? Because you should, because you're just saying, I want a divorce. This isn't the conversation. I'm thinking we should talk about divorce. Do you want to get a divorce? Do I want to get, like, that's not what we're talking about. This is, you've made the decision. You want a divorce. So therefore, let's talk about what you want, what you think he's going to say, what you want him to say. And then, then we can talk about the actual conversation.
You're listening to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we return, we will continue this conversation about the conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to Women Winning Divorce with Heather Quick, owner and attorney of Florida Women's Law Group. So Heather, the conversation. Alrighty, so we talked about not doing this, a big holiday or a big event, that type of thing. Also, make sure the kids aren't around, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is a, grown-up adult conversation that should just be between the two of you. And that will help keep you focused on the conversation.
Yeah. And it would also be a bad time for them to find out.
Exactly. And that's a whole nother episode. But yes, when that's avoidable, you want to avoid it. Sometimes people argue, the kids are there, things are said, but for what we're talking about in this conversation, that is going to be a calm, thought out, conversation. You do not want your children there. So you might not want to be at your house. If they may, be, you think, oh, they're all outside playing. No, that's, how kids are. As soon as adults lower their voice and have a conversation, they're all in your business. So you need to know that will likely happen. I don't care if they're asleep. They'll wake up and they're going to need something. And then you may get distracted and not really finish what you are intending to do.
So earlier in segments 1 and 2, you said, this is the conversation, I want a divorce, those 4 words. So what is this the time not to do? That makes sense.
Well, it does, because, and I think I touched on it in the last episode, you're not asking for permission to divorce him. You don't need his permission. And your word choice is important, because if you go into this with, we're just going to talk about divorce, then that's not this conversation, because that is a counseling conversation. This is I've made up my mind. I want a divorce, and this is how I hope it goes. Not a argument, not a plea bargaining type thing. This is a clear statement of your intention.
Okay. And so it's also not the time to say, all right, so this is what I want. I want alimony. I want this. I want that, because you're throwing a lot at them at that point.
Correct. And right. This is, I think the clearer you can be and succinct on that, because that's a lot to process in and of itself. And, we have talked about this. You've been thinking about this. You've built up the courage to have this conversation. You're listening to this. I mean, you're planning this out. They are hearing it for the first time. So don't overload, because then that turns almost into a negotiation about the divorce. So I don't think this is the time to talk about the house, the kids, alimony. This is time to say, I want a divorce. And, and I'd like, you to leave, to move out or whatever, and everything will work out. We will work everything out. That's an ideal situation, I will tell you, but it can happen. But I don't think this is time to say, well, and yes, I'm going to have the kids, all the time. You can have them every other weekend, but I want all the holidays, all these things that it's not the right time to talk about that. It's more about, I want a divorce. I want us to go through this acting like responsible adults. And so let's get attorneys and move through this process. I think the more focus you can stay on that, the better off you'll be, because that'll be hard. Those are going to be hard words to say. They're going to be hard words to say. Even though you've decided, if you're going to have this conversation, it's going to be difficult. And so I think that the more narrow, we're just talking like this talk, I think you're going to achieve the outcome you want, which is to let him know this is what you want. And then you guys are going to begin to do what you need to do to move that forward.
So something you mentioned in an earlier segment is that he may say, possibly, I mean, you know who you're married to. Okay. And that's it. But is that generally what will happen? I mean, there could be anger and a whole host of other emotions, right?
Well, correct. And then if you anticipate those, if your, husband's an angry guy, or, you guys have heated arguments in the past, then, go with my other advice, like don't have the conversation. For the others, but it could be for, the person, the husband that's not like that. They may be very emotional, because they haven't gotten probably as far along in the process as you, or maybe they have, but that the decision. But, if you are wanting this conversation, then I'm going to presuppose you guys have some decent kind of communication and an ability to talk with one another. But he's going to have to process this and the grief. And grief, anger, denial, all of those things that he's going to go through, very likely, or not, it maybe not at that point, but it could get emotional in a sad way. Like, and that would be, normal. But, that is just likely to happen. And I think you need to be prepared for that, and, not go to comfort him and make it all better. Like, no, it's a divorce. Like, we're going separate ways.
Okay. So, all right. Well, I had another question. Let me ask you this. Okay. Because when you said go comfort him and make it out, it's going to be okay or whatever, that could just change things right there in an instant.
That would be my advice. I mean, if this is what we're doing, then let's do it and handle it in a respectful, not cold, but don't find yourself in bed with him trying to comfort him. I mean, I just think that's going in the opposite direction.
Right, right. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so hold on. What about this? Okay, so I wonder how many people they've presented their spouse with this and say, okay, I want a divorce. And then he says, well, I've been waiting on this. Here's the papers.
Okay, that makes me laugh. Maybe. So, hey, and what if he says, I mean, come on, like, let's be honest, Julie, like we can talk about all the sadness and all poor and all that, but because that's kind of what you're going to imagine. But what if he's like, oh, thank goodness, gosh, I'm ready. So be prepared for that, because you know what? Sometimes I think we're thinking, okay, we're going to let him down easy and this could be so hard. What if he's relieved? Okay, be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like, this may not be this whole dramatic showdown of him begging to have you back. He may be like, okay, yeah, this is good. I was thinking the same thing. So don't let emotions, because you didn't expect that, and then go get angry with him, and he'll be like, because that makes no sense, right? No, it doesn't at all. And that's why with this, you may have it all planned out that, you're gonna, break up with him, and it's gonna be, you're gonna be very considerate of his feelings. What if he is happy and okay with it? You be prepared with that. Now, I'm not saying that are his true emotions, but you just this is gonna be big news. It's different than when you just break up with somebody. I mean, I remember, and that was like years and years ago, young adolescent and, in college and breaking up with somebody, and you think, oh my gosh, he's going to be devastated. They're like, okay, whatever, So, I mean, it's just like, you're not all that maybe. And that may be how he's going to cope with his emotions. Cause I think, I've already told you, if you think it's going to be a fight, don't do it. Like, you're setting things up to be very potentially dangerous. And I'm so very serious about this. And that's why I say, just don't even do it. Like, and I'll ask him, well, does he have guns? Does he ever have weapons? Has he ever said anything? Like, don't have that. Don't put yourself in that situation. We've all seen too many things in the papers and in the news, and it's not worth it. It's not. And if you think you owe him all this, like, you don't. I don't think so. Not for your safety. If that is something, and that's where you need objective insight on that, because you may not recognize how bad it could go. And I'm telling you, it does, and it can. And if he's really sad, okay, and you think he's, might go that way, well, all right. Be prepared for that, and be prepared to be strong and compassionate, but not too compassionate. I mean, you're actually being more genuine and caring for somebody if you're just being honest, but not giving them false, compassion, and telling them everything's gonna be okay. And that's just my point of view. I think that the more straightforward you can be and not detached, but he's going to think you're detached anyway, because you've kind of practiced and thought about this. So understand the words that come out of his mouth, he's not going to say anything that's going to benefit you. It's just the way he's feeling. And it's really about him, not you. So, try to move the conversation forward and have an objective as to, what does this conversation accomplish? Are you hoping he's going to pack up and move out? Are you planning to pack up and move out? Or are you planning to be like, okay, you stay in this bedroom, I'm going to stay here, let's get attorneys and move forward?
Wait a minute. Okay, I just thought about something. What if you're living in a place where your name is nowhere on, the deed, the whatever, the agreement? He could say, okay, bye.
Well, that's right. That's why you talk to a lawyer first, so you understand all of that. And then he doesn't say, okay, you want a divorce? hit the road and you are not sure, what are my rights? What should I do? So, because that could vary for different people. And generally speaking, he can't just kick you out if you're married. So, that's where you want advice on your particular situation on something like that, because there are some fact specific things that prior to this conversation, you should know. You should educate yourself, and not on Google, okay? With an attorney, with your facts, and help you kind of just see some other options.
Yeah, I was just thinking that you need to understand what's going on. So that's why it's a good idea to see someone like you.
Correct. And you don't have to tell him that. It's just helping to give you guidance so that you have more confidence and you have a plan. Like I said, depending on the conversation, say, yeah, I think we should each get attorneys and move through this. Like I said, as adults, that's what everybody wants. It doesn't always happen, but there's no reason you shouldn't say that.
Yeah. And let me correct myself. If you're here in the state of Florida, it's, you should see Heather specifically.
Or any member of our team at Florida Women's Law Group. Yes, you should come see our team, talk to us. Let us help you understand what's best for you in handling this conversation and this decision. Yeah. Because that's what we're talking about. It's a decision you've made. Now, how do I next move forward?
All righty, Heather, any parting words?
Well, as always, if you are a woman listening to this and this is really resonating and you're looking for help, please reach out to Florida Women's Law Group. We are here to help you and can advise you on your particular situation and the law and what next steps to take. Or if you know somebody who may be struggling with this, please send them to Florida Women's Law Group.
In one other episode, I asked Heather if someone has ever just walked in the office, and she said, no, that doesn't normally happen. They usually call or set it up online. Oh, boy. Yeah, I ask random questions. Well, Heather, thank you so much for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Julie. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, and enjoy your week.
You too. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Women Winning Divorce. We hope you found information to help you navigate your divorce. If you like our show, please take the time to subscribe and provide a 5-star review. If you need more information, please visit our website at womenwinningdivorce.com, where you will find previous episodes and other helpful content. Join us next week as we continue our journey of women winning divorce.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $700 on average, and those savings add up. Imagine what you could buy in the future.
So yeah, I used the savings from switching to Progressive 50 years ago to finally buy my dream car. It's a self-driving flying car, but we just say self-flying now. Because it's the future, and cars fly in the future.
So switch to Progressive and save big, because those savings can add up in the future. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2020. Potential savings will vary.